It all started like any other Tuesday. The fluorescent lights buzzed in room 204 as Mrs. Parker tried to convince a room full of sleepy teenagers that math was, in fact, useful. Outside, the autumn wind rattled the windows. But then, the intercom broke the monotony. Attention all students and staff. This is a lockdown. Please secure your classrooms immediately. At first, the students thought it was just a drill, something to break up the boredom. I mean, who doesn't enjoy a little extra time to scroll Instagram or whisper jokes to your friends under your breath, right? But then, the second announcement came. This is not a drill. That's when the fear set in. The click of the classroom door locking suddenly sounded much louder. Desks were shoved against the door, lights flicked off, and phones were silenced as the room plunged into an unsettling quiet. Why does every school lockdown feel like the start of a horror movie? Or is that just me? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The only sound was the muffled shuffle of sneakers and whispers from neighboring classrooms. But then, something happened that shattered the silence. Thud. It came from the hallway just outside the door. The students froze. Eyes darted to the door where a shadow, long, dark, and unmistakably human, stretched across the floor. It's just a janitor, someone whispered. Mrs. Parker shot them a look that could silence the dead. And then it happened again. Thud, thud, thud. The sound wasn't rhythmic. It wasn't footsteps. It was something heavier, something dragging. Suddenly, a voice called out, a voice that wasn't familiar. "Let me in," it said, muffled but sharp, like nails on a chalkboard. The shadow moved closer. The door handle rattled. That's when Mrs. Parker motioned for everyone to hide. The students ducked under desks, some trembling, others clinging to each other. One student, Mark, had his phone out, his hands shaking as he texted his parents. "Mom, I love you. There's someone here." Outside, the voice came again, louder this time. "Let me in or I'll make you." That's when the banging started. Okay, side note. Is there a rule that creepy things always have to bang on doors? Can't they politely knock for once? Just me? All right, back to the story. The banging grew louder, more forceful. Whatever or whoever was out there wasn't leaving. Then came the worst part. The classroom window, the tiny one in the door, suddenly went dark. Everyone held their breath. A face pressed against the glass. A man, middle-aged with wild eyes and a disheveled appearance, peered in. His lips curled into a smile. "Open the door," he whispered, his voice unnervingly calm now. Mrs. Parker whispered to the students to stay quiet. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, but before she could make a call, the man's fist slammed into the window. Cracks spider-webbed across the glass. In that moment, a scream pierced the silence. One of the students, a girl named Rachel, couldn't hold it in. The man's head snapped toward the sound, his smile widening. The intercom suddenly crackled to life. "Security is on its way. Remain where you are." But the man didn't flinch. He just stared at the class, his head tilting, like he was deciding what to do next. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, he turned and walked away. Footsteps echoed down the hall, fading into the distance. The students sat in stunned silence until the lockdown was lifted minutes later. When security arrived, they searched the building but found no one. The man had vanished. No one knew who he was, how he got in, or what he wanted. All that remained was the cracked window and the lingering fear that he might come back. To this day, no one knows what happened to the mysterious intruder. Was he someone from the outside or a former student? Was he even real? But here's what haunts me. Schools are supposed to be places of learning, safety, normalcy. Yet, in moments like this, that illusion shatters. So next time you hear a lockdown drill, ask yourself, what would you do if it wasn't just a drill? It started like any other Tuesday at Rockridge High School. Mrs. Carmichael, the regular history teacher, called out sick, and the class was greeted by a substitute. Mr. Grayson. At first glance, he seemed normal enough. Late 40s, button-up shirt a little too crisp, thick glasses that didn't quite sit right on his face. His smile lingered a second too long, but hey, maybe he was just really happy to be there. Most of the students shrugged it off. Sub days meant less work and more free time to scroll TikTok or nap on your desk. But by third period, something about Mr. Grayson started to feel off. He didn't take attendance. He didn't introduce himself properly. Instead, he stood at the front of the room, staring at the students like he was studying them. "Let's start with a little quiz," he finally said, his voice low and measured. But the quiz wasn't about history. It was about them. He asked questions like, "What's your biggest fear?" and "Who do you trust most in this room?" At first, the students thought it was some weird icebreaker. But when one girl, Chloe, refused to answer, his smile disappeared. "You'll answer eventually," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Okay, side note, is it just me? Or does this guy already sound like the villain in a Netflix thriller? Like, "Sir, maybe stick to lesson plans instead of psychological warfare?" As the day went on, Mr. Grayson's behavior became more unsettling. He didn't sit at the desk like a normal teacher. Instead, he paced the room, occasionally stopping to stare out the window, mumbling to himself. One student, Derek, dared to whisper a joke about him under his breath. Mr. Grayson stopped mid-step, turned slowly, and stared at Derek with an intensity that made the room go silent. "You think this is funny?" he asked. The students exchanged nervous glances, but the real terror began during lunch. Several students from Mr. Grayson's morning classes started comparing notes. "He asked me if I believed in ghosts," one said. "He told me my handwriting looked familiar," another whispered. By the time fifth period rolled around, the rumors were swirling. Mr. Grayson wasn't just strange, he was downright creepy. And then, the lockdown happened. Just as the students in Mr. Grayson's class settled into their seats, the intercom crackled. "Attention all students and staff. We are now in lockdown. Please follow protocol and remain silent." The students froze. Was it another drill? But Mr. Grayson didn't react the way a teacher should. Instead of following protocol, he locked the door himself, pulled the shades down, and stood in front of the room with a chilling smile. "You're all safe with me," he said. "No one's coming in or out." That's when Chloe noticed something strange. The way he locked the door wasn't standard procedure. He used his own key. But how could a substitute have a key to the classroom? Minutes turned into an eternity as the students sat in silence, the tension thick enough to choke on. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and getting closer. The students stared at the door, their hearts pounding like a drumbeat. Chloe reached for her phone, but Mr. Grayson noticed. "No phones," he hissed. Not during lockdown, but Chloe wasn't listening. Her hands shook as she texted, "Mom, something's wrong. Call the school." The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The handle rattled. The students held their breath. Mr. Grayson walked to the door, pressing his ear against it. "Go away," he whispered, his tone eerily calm. But whoever, or whatever, was outside didn't leave. Suddenly, there was a loud bang. The door shuttered. The students screamed. Mr. Grayson didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the class, his face eerily serene. "Do you know why they do lockdowns?" he asked. "It's not to keep you safe. It's to trap you inside." Chloe couldn't take it anymore. She bolted for the door, but Mr. Grayson caught her arm. His grip was ice cold. "You don't want to do that," he said. And then, the intercom came back on. Lockdown over. Resume normal activities. Mr. Grayson smiled, released Chloe, and stepped back. The students sat frozen as the door swung open, revealing the principal and 2 police officers. "Mr. Grayson," the principal said, her voice trembling, "can you come with us?" He didn't resist. He just looked back at the class one last time and said, "I'll see you soon." And then, he was gone. Later, the students learned the truth. Mr. Grayson wasn't a substitute at all. He wasn't even a teacher. The school never found out how he got in or what his real intentions were. But the scariest part? They never found him again. So the next time you see a substitute teacher, take a closer look. Because sometimes the scariest monsters don't hide in the dark. They're standing right in front of you. It was a chilly Thursday morning in late October, just weeks before Thanksgiving break. The kind of day where you're half asleep, staring at the clock, and counting down the seconds until lunch. In Mrs. Carter's history class, 26 juniors slouched at their desks. Phones were tucked away, some reluctantly, some not at all. A few whispers buzzed in the back row where two students debated the age-old question. Was Mrs. Carter wearing another cat-themed sweater? Then the voice came through the intercom. This is the principal. We are now in a lockdown. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The room froze. Mrs. Carter sprang into action, pulling down the blinds, locking the door, and motioning everyone to the corner of the room. Phones buzzed silently as panicked students texted their friends and families. At first, it felt surreal. Lockdowns are for drills, right? But then came the sound that made everyone's stomach drop. Slow, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway, getting louder with each step. The students exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Carter, always calm and collected, motioned for silence. But her face betrayed her. Pale, tense, eyes darting toward the door. Then the sound stopped. The footsteps were right outside the classroom. Who or what was out there? A janitor? A teacher? A madman? And just when they thought things couldn't get worse, the doorknob rattled. Rattle. Twist. Rattle again. Someone or something was trying to get in. And let's be honest, everyone in that corner was regretting skipping cardio. That heart rate? Through the roof. But seriously, what would you do in that moment? Hide? Cry? Play dead? All solid options. Except one student, Jamie, made a different choice. Jamie was the quiet kid in class, the kind of person you only noticed when roll call was taken. But that day, Jamie became unforgettable. When the doorknob rattled again, Jamie stood up. He whispered, "I think I know who it is." Mrs. Carter's eyes widened as she mouthed, "Sit. Down." But Jamie didn't listen. He crept toward the door, every step slower than the last. The class watched, frozen in disbelief. Was Jamie insane? The room was so silent you could hear everyone holding their breath. Jamie leaned toward the small glass window on the door and peeked out. What he saw made his face go ghostly white. He stumbled back, whispering, "It's him." Mrs. Carter hissed, "Who?" Jamie didn't answer. Instead, he scrambled back to the group, hands trembling. And that's when the banging started. Loud, violent pounding on the door. Whatever or whoever was out there, they weren't walking away anytime soon. But here's where things take an even darker turn. The police arrived 15 minutes later, rushing through the hallways to find the intruder. But when they reached the classroom door, the pounding had stopped. They unlocked the door, and no one was there. The hallway was empty. The officers searched the entire school. Every classroom, every closet, every inch of the building. Nothing. No footprints, no broken locks, no sign of forced entry. But Jamie? He swears to this day that he saw the face of a man he recognized, a former student who'd been expelled a year earlier for threatening staff. The problem? That student had died in a car accident 6 months before the lockdown. So, who or what was pounding on that door? If this story sent shivers down your spine, you're not alone. And trust me, this is just the beginning. I've got plenty more bone-chilling tales waiting for you. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me for the next story, if you dare. Until then, stay safe. And maybe check the locks on your doors tonight. You never know who or what might be out there.